The goal of this presentation is to give you some support as you work through your figurative language practice for the Figurative Language Analysis benchmark. You want to be focused throughout on what is the device and how is it being used, and that's the goal of this assessment. Step 1 on your benchmark and on your practice is to read the passage and identify figurative language. As you look, you want to be looking for language that is rich and generates multiple interpretations. That's lots of things that overlap in that center of the Venn diagram, not something like her hands were cold as ice, that only helps you figure out one thing, that her hands were cold. A recommendation is that you use comparison-based devices like similes, metaphors, and personification because they are the easiest to analyze. You can also use imagery, which is description using the 5 senses, such as what things look or sound or smell like, but those can be more challenging to analyze than a straight comparison like a simile. So on your homework, you want to read and annotate the passage on the sample, and keep an eye out for figurative language that you notice. Also, give yourself a chance to get the context and the gist of the passage so you can make sure that all of your interpretations fit that context. Look down and read your passage now, it's in the box, and continue this video once you've done that. Now that you've read your passage, you want to start by writing down the context or the gist, and this shows up before your analysis because you want to make sure you've got it before you analyze anything within the passage. So for this one, I would write, this passage from chapter 6 describes the brutality and violence of an attack and counterattack in a World War I battle. After you've written the context, then you want to narrow in on one figurative language quote. This is the first half of the quote that's on your homework document. You'll notice I've highlighted in yellow comparison-based figurative language, similes, metaphors, and personification. I've highlighted in red stuff that is imagery. It could work, it's harder to analyze. So here, howling waste compares no man's land to a wasteland. The machine gun is already in position and barking is a figurative language that's giving some characteristics to the machine gun. In red, we have this machine guns rattle, rifles crack. That's the sound of the battlefield. Second half of the passage, smooth, distorted faces is imagery that helps us imagine what the faces of the Frenchmen look like. Wire cradle compares the barbed wire to a cradle. His body collapses, his hands remain suspended as though he were praying, is another piece of comparison-based figurative language. Under one of the helmets, a dark pointed beard and 2 eyes that are fastened on me is imagery, visual imagery that helps us imagine what things look like. The whole slaughter whirls like a circus around me is a comparison-based. And then last, these 2 eyes alone are motionless, then the head rises up, a hand, a movement, and my hand grenade flies through the air and into him, is another piece of imagery of what things look like, a series of motions. You want to narrow in on one figurative language quote. For me, I zoomed in on this one, and I was thinking about, okay, so this compares the battle, which is the, quote, slaughter, to a circus, and it uses like, so I know it's a simile. And I have lots of schema about circuses, and I have several ideas about similarities between the battle and a circus. So this is a good device for me to analyze. Again, you want to draw something that you understand, that you have schema about, that you can see the connections between the two. So I'm going to do circus and the slaughter of the battle. So now I'm going to compare the battle to a circus. On one side, I have the battle. On the other side, I have a circus. So I'm drawing on my schema. These are things I picture when I think about circuses. And then I'm going to do my Venn diagram on my document. On one side, a battle, I think of war, fighting, violence, killing trenches. On the other side, I think of a circus. It's entertainment, it's fun, it's exciting, there's a tent, it's really colorful. When I think about the things that they have in common, I think about that they are both loud. They're really sound stimulating. There's lots of noises. They're chaotic, lots of different things happening at once. They can be overwhelming, and I think those graphics of the circus showed that. Sometimes they can be scary or intense. There's people in dangerous situations or like weird circus performers that are kind of weird, and so it might be full of weird and freaky things. Okay, so those are the connections I see between the two. Once I've thought of my connections, I have to divide them out into 2 different pieces of analysis. Remember, to exceed the standard, you need 2 different, nuanced pieces of analysis that build on each other. And to pass, to meet, you need at least 2 different ideas in your analysis. So for my analysis number 1, I'm going to focus on these 2 common characteristics. It's loud and it's chaotic. And then here's what I'm going to write for my analysis based on those first two. So based on the loud and chaotic comparison, I would say, this illustrates the chaos and noise of the battle, like the strident music and overblown colors of an elaborate circus. So I'm trying to emphasize the chaos and noise. For my second piece of analysis, I'm going to focus on these pieces, so these similarities, and I'm going to write that up as my second piece. So in addition, Remarque uses this line to convey the disorienting, grotesque nature of the battle. At a circus, the audience is exposed to all sorts of acts that go beyond the normal comfort zone. Scary lions, contortionists, clowns that are half funny and half scary. In a similar way, the war is full of bizarre, horrifying scenes that command the soldiers' attention, even as they wish they could look away. So I have two different ideas. One is loud and chaotic. The other one is this kind of scary, intense, you don't want to look at it, but you should. And I've conveyed both of those ideas about the battle. That means that on this rubric, I've selected the quote, I've identified the device, and I've given two different nuanced pieces of analysis that connect to each other but are not repetitive. Remember that you have to get exceeding or meeting to pass this benchmark on the first try. Go ahead and complete your practice round, and we'll have time to talk about it in class tomorrow, so you can ask questions about whether you would have passed or not and how best to get there. Good luck!